Welcome back to Inside Politics. Our guest today is Dr. John Weil, MTSU political science professor and dean of the Honors College at MTSU as well. We're talking about the results of the off-year elections and what they may mean for the midterm elections coming up here when 2022 begins. Dr. Weil, Donald Trump's been out of office for nearly 10 months. He's been off of social media about that long, yet he seems to remain the most dominant person in all of the Republican Party. I think he's taking some credit, particularly for what happened in Virginia. Wasn't this a pretty good night for him, too?
It was, yes. I'll make it easy. Yes, it was.
Well, he keeps saying he's going to run again in 2024 for president. But even if he doesn't, until he decides what he's going to do, isn't he freezing out most of the other Republicans who might like to run for president but don't want to go in and start looking like they're crowding Donald Trump on making his decision?
Yeah, it's interesting. Mike Pence seems to be moving pretty close now to, and he has made something of a break. It was very interesting, when he was asked why he did not certify Trump as president. First, he said he had listened to, I guess, channel James Madison, and then he quoted the scripture verse. But yes, I think there are a lot of people that, if they get in too early, they could very well antagonize Trump.
Do you put any stock in the continued reports that some GOP members in the House might want to elect Donald Trump as Speaker of the House as the Republicans take back over in 2023? Is that a viable idea? Is he really, you can be Speaker and not be a member of Congress, but is Donald Trump a person who'd like to be Speaker of the House in any way at all?
I don't think so. I think he would be, like the fish out of water. He likes to be hiring and firing and making all these decisions, and I don't think he'd find that's what the Speaker does.
Is it risky to make Trump that high profile in the midterm elections? I mean, might this not re-energize Democrats to come out and vote in those House races to make sure that Donald Trump does not become the next Speaker of the House?
Yes, again, we've never had. And I checked with my colleague, Mark Burns, who's an expert in the presidency. We have never had someone who wasn't actually elected to serve as Speaker of the House. As you pointed out, the Constitution doesn't forbid it. But I think that might be more publicity. And also, if you took the job seriously, it would probably make the role of campaigning much harder. One advantage, Trump had was, if you're not in office, you can go where you want and do the rallies you want without having to worry about being called back for a vote or, taking care of the kind of things that Pelosi's doing right now.
If Donald Trump is not the nominee in 2024, isn't he the kingmaker to make whoever is? And might that be one of the GOP governors across the country? Abbott down in Texas, DeSantis in Florida, or maybe even Bill Lee here in Tennessee?
I think Haslam, if you were going to choose somebody from Tennessee, Haslam might be a better choice than Lee right now. But I don't know. I mean, today, yes, he would be the kingmaker. But, just yesterday in Manhattan, I believe it was, they reconvened another grand jury to look at Trump's taxes. We got an ongoing investigation in the House of Representatives on the event of January 6th. I would be very reluctant, if I were the Republican Party, to put all my eggs in that basket. He could end up being a president disgraced worse than Richard Nixon was before it's over.
But in terms of Trump being under investigation or perhaps getting into legal trouble, that's been rumored for so long, as long as he's gotten back into the public life to do this, and certainly even before he was president. Does not the public and maybe a lot of politicians just kind of discount that's just a lot of talk?
Well, they may be discounting it, but, the fact that it's taken a while might simply mean that when it comes, it'll come with a vengeance. And that, that can do a lot to tie a person up in terms of, being able to campaign if they're giving depositions and being hauled before juries and the like.
In normal times, Mitch McConnell would be considered the titular head of the Republican Party, and it being the minority leader in the U.S. Senate. As far as what he does, is he going to be content to do everything he can to get the Republicans back in control of the Senate and let the 2024 presidential race go however it goes, he and Donald Trump or whatever else, and sort of stay out of that and mind his business in the Senate?
I suspect that it's right. He has sort of this love-hate relationships almost with Trump. He doesn't vote to impeach him, but then he gets up and gives a speech telling how bad his actions were. So I think, like many politicians, I think he's primarily concerned about his own power. And if Trump will help him, he'll use Trump, and if he doesn't, he'll be willing to dump him.
Isn't the potential problem for Mitch McConnell, though, is that Donald Trump is endorsing GOP candidates in the primary for these Senate races, and he may result in bringing in some candidates that Mitch McConnell has to try to support in November that are not strong candidates he wanted to have. I'm thinking particular of the concerns they have about the Herschel Walker candidacy down in Georgia, which again will have crucial Senate races.
Yeah, I think that's a real issue, and there have been times where Trump has gone and endorsed, a Democrat over a Republican who wasn't, Trumpian enough for him. So Trump as well is out for number one, I'm afraid.
On the Democratic side, it would appear President Biden would be the first choice for being the presidential candidate for 2024 for re-election. But he was unclear about whether he was going to seek a second term when he was running last year. What odds do you give him, given all the problems and difficulties he's been facing recently, that he'll decide to go ahead and go for a second term?
His age is clearly a factor, and it might be with Trump. I mean, neither of these gentlemen are spring chickens, and we just had a meeting of our Board of Visitors, and I had a student tell about how he was what his plans were for the next year, and one of the board members says, man proposes, God disposes. And so I think it's a little I think it's wise of Biden at this point. If he thinks he's not going to run, I certainly wouldn't begin telling people that. It makes him more of a lame duck. There's a chance that he could run, then he's going to have more power than if he doesn't. But whether he will or not, I just don't know. I would think that maybe Harris would have a shot if he were to step down. He's kept her pretty close. She's been in the limelight. So that's a possibility. Again, Democratic governors are also always possibilities.
Dr. John Viles, our guest, is Middle Tennessee State University political science professor and dean of the Honors College at that school. Back to continue our conversation about the fallout from the off-year elections held this week after this break.